listening to Out Cincinnati on 91.7 WVXU HD2 in Cincinnati. And we are joined today by one of my favorite people and one of my new favorite people in Cincinnati, Chris Seelbach, City Council member, and Craig Schultz. I it was just on Facebook I requested you the other day, so it was one of those, what's his last name? It's so nice to have you both.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I was asking, we were doing a mic check, and it was funny, what did you have for lunch? One of those silly things, starting off with an embarrassment. No, I want to ask, well, we're going to kind of go, this is unique, talking to both of you. So I'll start with, when and where did you meet? How did this come about? What's the cute story?
Yeah, so we met almost 14 years ago, June 12th. Actually after Pride in Cincinnati, in Northside, which we're currently in. I was working for the David Crowley, who was on City Council, and after the parade and festival, I went and joined some friends, and my friends were hanging out with Craig's friends, and that's how we met. We were on a back patio and kind of saw each other, and there was something there, and so we kind of started talking, and the rest is history.
Is that how do you remember who bought the first drink, or who stared at who first?
I think he caught my eye from afar.
Yeah, he probably gave it back to you.
Yeah, and then we talked a little bit, and then we were just bar hopping, like the event goes all day long. And then I think we ended up at Hamburger Mary's that night. And
with the group.
And I don't think we've been apart in 14 years.
That's wonderful. And I was looking at the biography, as much as I could find. What's the cat count now?
So there's just one, Uno.
Yeah.
What? That's not the cat's name, is it?
No.
Raya.
Uno Raya.
We just got back from Mexico, so Craig's still speaking Spanish.
Uno Rayo a la casa, right? Okay.
Uno gata en la casa.
Uno gato en chat à la maison. So that's my French coming into Out Cincinnati. You're listening to Out Cincinnati on 91.7 WVXU HD2, a radio artifact. Craig.
Yes.
Chris is sitting next to you. I found a lot of stuff about Chris. I just Google. There's YouTube. There's all kinds of great stuff. What's your bread and butter? What are you interested in? Or what do you want folks to know in the LGBT community in Cincinnati about Craig Schultz, or about you and Chris?
I don't know. I've been around for a long time.
What's your line of work?
So I work for private families. I design their landscapes and curate their properties here in Cincinnati.
So
have been for the past 26 years.
So that's yours. Your created business from the ground up. Mm-hmm. That is, I know many people, and that is a tough. That you're always working,
it is,
and everything is on you.
Mother Nature's always against me.
Yes. Chris was saying you're working at all hours, and I was wondering about that work-life balance. Chris, when do you get home? Craig, when do you get home? Do you ever get home?
It totally depends, and that's kind of what I love about my job, is that it is not a 9 to 5, clock in, clock out, sit at a desk all day, and then go home and have dinner and then go to sleep. So, one day I could be in council formal meetings all day and
fun.
Yeah, and be debating policy and trying to get the votes. And then the next day I could be at a community council in a neighborhood and listening to people talk about, things that are going on in their neighborhood, problems that they have, solutions that they're working on. The next day I could be, at a gala supporting the Human Rights Campaign or other things. And so it is you never know the hours of the day, and that's kind of what makes it fun, is that it isn't a job that is kind of clock in, clock out.
Right, and then I imagine, Craig, yours, you can kind of work, not whenever, but with weather permitting, and there's invoicing when you're not out doing, and there's different things, so it's nice that you have that freedom. I'm sure you find a time to grab a bite to eat by the kitchen sink, before bed. I'm able
to turn off, though. When the sun goes down, I'm pretty much finished with work. Unlike Chris, who gets phone calls at 11:30 at night. It could be from the city manager or a reporter or what have you. So
So I'm literally, from the time I wake up, when I wake up, I look at my phone and I have a dozen text messages. From the time that I go to bed and I'm, talking to a reporter or the city manager or a colleague, there's no there's no clocking out of my job.
So you don't do the thing that I do where you turn off the notifications at 9 p.m. and you can't be bothered with it, because I'll freak out about an email at 10 and I just can't at that time. You're listening to Out Cincinnati on Radio Artifact. We're talking with Craig Schultz and Chris Seelbach. It's wonderful to have you both. I wanted to ask more of a serious thing. You've done a lot of work with the homeless population in Cincinnati. How does that impact and obviously it impacts everybody, every walk of life. Where have you seen it? What work have you done, and what work is there still left to do to keep people off the streets in general, and especially, or not especially, but for the LGBT population in Cincinnati?
Yeah, I mean, there's tremendous amount of work to do. It's a problem that we may never solve, although we can absolutely chip away at it. And, the statistics tell us that the significant amount of the homeless community, those experiencing homelessness, are LGBTQ plus, especially in the trans community, especially in the of color community. And so, what we've done in the city is invest in state-of-the-art facilities. We spent over $10 million for our general population shelter, for a women's shelter, for a family shelter, so that people have a facility that they can go to whenever they need it. Lighthouse Youth Services does incredible work specific to the LGBTQ homeless community. We were one of 2 cities that got grants, let me say 8-9 years ago. I think Austin, Texas was the other one, just to study and help the LGBTQ homeless community. And so Lighthouse has continued that work, and so the city and I'm supportive of the great job that they do. So, we've done a lot. We're the first city to include homeless status in our city's hate crime legislation. Because,
so like a fairness... Or is that considered a fairness ordinance?
No. So our hate crimes are when someone singles you out for an act of violence just because of who you are or your homeless status.
Okay.
And so homeless people experiencing homelessness are more susceptible to violence than perhaps any other population, because they're vulnerable, they're on the streets.
Down and out, that's right.
And so we've said that if you target someone just because they're homeless, that your penalty can be enhanced as that crime.
Okay, that I appreciate that explanation, because I think a lot of people don't realize the different communities that do exist. The fact that there is a LGBT community that is impacted in a particular way. I mean, there are people who get kicked out at 17, 18. Chris and Craig too. What would you say? I mean, if you had kids, or what would you say to an 18-year-old calls you up? I got kicked out. Where's the first place you go? Especially if you're in the suburbs.
Yeah, so the first person I would call is Melissa from Lighthouse Youth Services, and because they have a program specific to housing LGBTQ homeless individuals. And so I would call them, and Lighthouse expands beyond the city of Cincinnati. So we're fortunate that we have resources like that. Not many cities do. So that's who I would call. And, there are also tons of other resources with GLSEN, the Gay Lesbian Straight Education Network, although I think they just go by their acronym now, with a significant youth group for LGBT young people. So there's lots of resources that are out there to connect young people to, unlike when Craig and I were kids.
And me too.
There was none, literally none.
It was pulling at straws, trying to figure out who we were, this is just me and who I was at the time. I appreciate that explanation. And of course we'll post links to services at Out Cincinnati on our Facebook and every platform. That's an important thing to share. I want to come back in just a little bit and play a little newlywed game. Well, even though it's not a newlywed thing, I want to have a couple catchy questions. Hola, because what was it?
It's probably just Craig is the better half.
The better half. Where were you?
Everyone would agree with
you. Were just speaking Spanish and sipping something where, and that's why you come in and said.
We were in a little town south of Cancun for a wedding.
Okay, and did you actually get to speak Spanish, or were all the
I used the 2 words that I know, hola and what's the other one?
Adios.
Cerveza. I'm not sure. Well, Chris, I wanted to ask you before we get into this fun little game I've kind of thrown together, I guess. I don't know. Not thrown together, but this fun little game. I want to ask about the fairness ordinance in Cincinnati. How long has it been in place? What is a fairness ordinance for people who are unfamiliar with that kind of a new term?
So it's a long answer, but I'll try to make it really short. In 1993, a progressive city council passed an inclusive ordinance that said you can't fire people or deny them housing or discriminate against them in public accommodation because of their sexual orientation or gender identity expression. And it was immediately put on the ballot to repeal by Citizens for Community Values. It was repealed. We lived under this charter amendment that made us the most anti-gay city in the country by some accounts. In 2004, the voters repealed Article 12. And so soon after that, I think 2005, Council reinstated our Human Rights Ordinance. And so we've lived under this ordinance since 2005, which says you can't discriminate in the city of Cincinnati on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. It's funny because when the original wording was you couldn't discriminate against based on transgendered status.
Which transgendered is
not a word.
It's an odd. Well, yeah, it's used, but it's very it's offensive and odd.
Well, it doesn't have an ED on it.
Right, exactly.
Well-meaning people in the 90s thought that was the word. So anyway, we cleared all of those words.
Like something happened to you. Right. Okay.
So anyway, so now Cincinnati is the most inclusive LGBT city in the country when it comes to policy. We were the first city in the country to make it illegal to send kids to conversion therapy. The third city in the country to offer transgender health benefits for all city employees. So people would never think that this Midwestern conservative city would be leading the way, but we are.
That's great. And I knew that Covington had one, and I was researching, and that's just wonderful. I think that's kind of a new and interesting thing that's needed, and I think they're interesting to read personally, just the language and that kind of to put a policy together like that. Okay, fun question time. Now you got to. We're not writing these down.
Okay.
You're thinking them, and you have to be honest.
Okay.
So if I say, obviously, Chris, don't change.
All right.
So Gold Star or Skyline? Don't answer out loud. Gold Star or Skyline? Craig.
I have to go with Gold Star.
And then Chris just ran down the steps. So
for so many reasons that I won't go.
Yeah, no reasons needed. Skyline.
Well, so I'm a vegetarian. However, I pick Skyline for reasons beyond the food.
Okay, because they have I understand. I want to know now listen carefully. If your partner was a piñata and you whacked him with a whooping stick, what would be the first thing to fall out? So Chris, if you whacked Craig with a whooping stick, or Craig, if you whacked Chris with a whooping stick, I can't get enough of whooping stick. What's the first thing to fall out of Craig, or what's the
Do you know what you're gonna say?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say chicken for Craig.
Okay, we won't say which chicken shop. We can assume it's not a certain one.
All of them.
All of them. Okay, and what would you say?
Probably a cat or a cat treat.
a cat treat or a cat treat?
I can't swing anything in our house without a cat.
We used to have 5 cats, but 4 have passed away.
Oh, well that is the ebb and flow of life, and I'm sure the one that is left is getting all of 6 cats worth of love.
18 or 19, yeah.
If you had to pick a female celebrity for your spouse if they had been born straight, which celebrity would you pick? And it doesn't even have to be a celebrity, but somebody that we know would be nice. Who would you pick?
My first thought was Lady Gaga, because Craig needs. I'm not
for you or for me?
For you.
Yeah.
Not that I'm anything like Lady Gaga, but Craig is naturally like a homebody that probably would have 2 or 3 friends, so he needs someone that gets him out to do stuff.
Gaga would do that for Craig.
I think so. He would make his life more fun by getting out of the house
and going to the monster. But I don't know.
Yeah.
What celebrity or non-celebrity would you pick for Chris to be hitched with if he were straight?
I don't know. I don't think of women that often.
I don't think of women that often. Okay, so
someone easygoing.
You wouldn't pick
All right, Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway.
She loves musical theater.
She'll rob you blind. Just like Batman. So that is wonderful. And thank you so much, Craig and Chris.
Thanks for having us.
It's been wonderful. You're listening to Out Cincinnati on 91.7 at WVXU HD2 Radio Artifact.